I look at the faces around me, and I know nobody expected anything like this.
Remember when game developers actually took risks? Today that role seems relegated to indie developers as bigger publishers stick to playing it safe. Believe it or not, Activision used to be a publisher who took their chances. Call of Duty wasn't always the juggernaut it is today. Hot off the global phenomenon that was Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, only 1 year later, Activision was set to release a sequel. This speeded development time was due to Activision having 2 game studios developing Call of Duty titles. Infinity Ward had released Modern Warfare to critical acclaim in 2007, and now it was Treyarch's turn to step up to the plate. But how do you follow up near perfection? Do you keep the modern setting of the previous title, or do you jump forwards in time for a futuristic setting? Well, Treyarch did neither with the release of Up to the release of Modern Warfare, every Call of Duty had been set during World War II, so it makes sense that World at War would be set during this period, since its development started before Modern Warfare was released. This move had some fans worried who enjoyed the modern setting of Call of Duty 4. But going into the past doesn't mean the game couldn't mature in its gameplay, themes, and features. Treyarch had to take risks and step into unknown territory for their vision of this game to be successful. Being new to the Call of Duty development cycle, as well as having to play the encore show for one of the biggest games ever released at that point, Treyarch had a lot to prove. In fact, I believe World at War to be a masterclass in how to add immense value to your game. Even now we're playing the game 16 years later, I found new things I never noticed before. This game highlights how much of an impact sound design has on strengthening your theme. There is no wasted space within this game, audibly or visually. Seriously, the sound design in this game is just immaculate. Before we dig into the campaign, just listen to the effect that the soundtrack has on the main menu. The first mission of the campaign brings us back to 1942, just months after the Japanese had attacked US soil. An animated cutscene plays showing us the setting of the Pacific theater of World War II. These cutscenes that play before each level have aged timelessly and really hammer home the theme. Some even include real-life footage from the period, which elevates them even further. I don't see these mission intro videos talked about nearly enough, considering how memorable they are and how much character they bring to the game. After this cutscene completes, we assume control of Private Miller, a Marine tasked with performing recon who had gone missing. Just before we get a new airway installed by our Japanese captors, we're rescued by the rest of the Marine raiders. Corporal Roebuck and Sergeant Sullivan lead a revenge-fueled charge against the rest of the Japanese soldiers on Macon Island, with the final goal of securing the island. Immediately you notice a difference in tone to previous COD campaigns. There is a serious and more grounded theme for some of the more over-the-top scenes from Call of Duty 4. What hasn't changed too much are the core mechanics and general gameplay. Controls, shooting, movement, and behavior of the enemy AI all are similar to what came before it. This isn't meant to be a bad thing. Most of these things feel great, although there were a few times when the hit detection and movement seemed a bit sluggish. It is worth noting I am playing the backwards compatible version on Xbox Series X, so that may be part of the problem. This could have also been the reason I noticed some input delay while playing. None of these minor issues really had an impact on my experience, but were just things I noticed replaying this game with a more critical eye. Okay, back to the campaign. Before we can leave the island, we're tasked with blowing up a Japanese ammo bunker. Once the charges are planted, we make our escape to nearby boats. Just before we make our way to safety, we're ambushed by a Japanese soldier and his sword. Before he can deliver the killing blow, Sergeant Sullivan rescues us and pulls us to safety, our injured body placed onto a boat as the mission fades away. This first mission alone has many memorable moments, but one of the best I think is this scene. Japanese bodies are laid out all around, causing confusion as to who had killed them. And just as we get close and radio to see if another squad had been through the area, a flare lights off out of the darkness as the Japanese bodies start fighting back. This effectively teaches a player to not trust anything and that the Japanese will fight any way they can. The next mission, Little Resistance, takes place a couple years later, where Marines are tasked with taking control of an airfield on the island of Pelelu, a major supply network for the Japanese. Corporal Roebuck comments that himself, Sullivan, and the player are known as the old breed, even though they're not even in their 30s yet. The amphibious assault on the island doesn't go as planned. The expected Little Resistance was anything but. A cannon mounted on a mountain ridge as well as a defensive line of Japanese infantry make the start of this mission a bloodbath. The initial airstrike called in by the player highlights the gruesome outcome for soldiers involved in any conflict. Call of Duty 4 sometimes felt like a shooting gallery, enemies just falling over after being shot with little variation. But in World at War, enemies can have limbs or even their heads blown clean off. Sometimes wounded enemies will try to crawl away before bleeding out. Some enemies will bonsai charge the player with bayonets. The screams and reactions of the enemies who get tagged by a flamethrower are intense. Some of the real-life footage I spoke about earlier shows actual executions and brutality. These things really set this game apart as it's trying to portray something more real, enforcing the idea that this may be a fictional story, but it's taking place during a non-fictional event. The variation in enemy AI, gameplay designs, and its differentiating use of set pieces go far in making this game unique to what came before it, without going too far that the game is unrecognizable to its predecessor. It's like the bones of World at War and Call of Duty 4 are the same, but what was built on top of these skeletons are what sets them apart. The rest of this mission boils down to taking control of Japanese positions so we can safely move forward and take more. This isn't to say this mission is boring, this game is never boring. Check out this moment during some of the trench clearing. This organic gameplay moment happened completely by chance and cinematically blows anything from recent Call of Duties out of the water. Oh, and the enemies who bayonet charge you sometimes lead to a one-on-one engagement that leads to one of you stabbing the other to death. A non-scripted quick-time event that doesn't happen very often and doesn't overstay its welcome. At the end of the level, just as we think we are safe, Sergeant Sullivan is mortally wounded by a Japanese bayonet. Everyone had let their guards down, and the player was not able to be the savior that Sullivan was to us on Macon Island. Moving forward, Sullivan's body is sent home and Roebuck is now promoted to sergeant. The next mission, Hard Landing, follows Roebuck and his Marines getting closer to and capturing the Peleliu airfield. It's more of the same, moving forward and securing positions so more forces can advance, which is true to the real-life Asia-Pacific War. US forces would move in and take positions one island at a time, skipping only the most fortified islands. The idea being that if you take the land surrounding one island, the isolated island is no longer a threat. Being unable to resupply or communicate with surrounding allies, these leapfrogged islands were left to wither on the vine. Once the Peleliu airfield is captured, one final assault by the Japanese is launched, which the player must defend. Successfully doing so completes this section of the campaign. This mission has many more examples of Japanese fighting tactics. Booby traps and surprise attacks are laid out throughout the level, and some enemies will be in ghillie suits hiding in the trees. This level might be one of the least memorable in the game, especially the second half. Also, the person in charge in the screen shake during gameplay was on something, because this is ridiculous. The mission seems to drag on just a bit and start to get repetitive towards the end, but that's okay because the next level is a total shift in setting and gameplay. Vendetta is probably the most popular level in the game. The first European campaign mission starts with dead Russian allies all around the player, similar to the movie Enemy at the Gates. Those who give away they are still alive are executed by German soldiers walking by. Crawling over your dead comrades, you find one who is still alive but injured. His name is Reznov, and he guides the player, Dmitry, through this escape against all odds. Reznov's main goal, and by proxy your main goal, is to kill Heinrich Amsel, a German general responsible for massacres against Russia and its people. He hands you a sniper to take out Amsel's troops ahead of you under the mask of airplanes flying overhead. With Amsel now having little protection, you close in on the building to finish him off. But just as you get close, a German armored vehicle rolls in, causing you to retreat and take a different route. Reznov has been studying Amsel and his habits for days, and knows where he will be going. On a route to flank and surprise Amsel, a sniper shot rings out and nearly hits Reznov. The two of you take cover in a nearby building where a game of sniper cat and mouse takes place. This section is notoriously hard on veteran difficulty, but on recruit it only takes one shot. Reznov will assist the player by drawing out the sniper shots, but he will only assist you once. After that, it's up to the player to finish the job. After the enemy sniper is eliminated, the pair move downstairs where they end up alerting nearby German soldiers with flamethrowers. These Germans light the building on fire in an attempt to kill Reznov and Dmitry. Making their way through the burning building, debris falls and traps Dmitry. Reznov lifts the debris off and the two jump out of the burning building onto the street below, where more Germans with flamethrowers are waiting. Just before getting toasted, Russian allies put down the Germans. Their goal is to take control of a German communications outpost. Since this will help prevent Amsel from calling for help, Reznov agrees to assist. Knowing how Reznov acts in the future titles, it's interesting to see how he is similar in this game. That is, being solely focused on his mission, regardless to the effects on the allies around him. After assisting with the capture, Dmitry and Reznov move to a new spot overlooking the building. German reinforcements arrive and start annihilating the Russians inside the outpost. The player can choose to shoot and try to help in vain while giving away their position, or to not shoot and let the massacre happen with little resistance. Either way, the sounds of war scare Amsel out of hiding, where he is ended by Dmitry. After the shot rings out, a German tank pinpoints the Russian sniper's location and they must flee. Many Germans move into the building trapping them, and they have no choice but to jump into the river below, allowing the pair to escape. 3 years pass by and the war is now being fought on German soil. Again, we take control of Dmitry. We are inside a small house with multiple German captors having a conversation. While they are talking, we reach for a rifle, but get caught and swiftly get a boot to the face. As tensions escalate, explosions can be heard outside. A corner of the house gets blown open and through the smoke a figure walks through. Our old buddy Reznov shows up and shoots the disoriented Germans before recognizing a familiar face. He tells one of his soldiers, Private Chernov, to finish off the wounded Germans while helping us up. Chernov refuses to shoot the wounded as they are already bleeding out. Reznov hands us a rifle and leaves the decision up to us. The rest of the mission follows the Red Army pushing the Wehrmacht back through Silo Heights, moving closer to the German capital of Berlin. While the Germans are retreating, Reznov orders troops to fire upon them. Chernov objects to this with asking, Are we to shoot them in the back? Reznov responds with, the back, the head, no matter as long as they're dead. Chernov's character is shown to have emotions and has moral obligations which he voices frequently. He is also frequently seen with his diary where he journals his thoughts, much to the annoyance of Reznov. Returning to the Pacific Theater, Roebuck informs us that although we've taken the Pelulu airfield, the Japanese still have control of much of the inland area. Trenches and mortar pits prevent US heavy armor from advancing, and it's our job to fix that problem. We are given a flamethrower, and like the name of this mission, we burn them out. This is one of the shorter missions, but stands out because the flamethrower is a one-touch kill weapon, coating whatever it hits with burning napalm gel. Enemies hit by the blaze enter into a frantic animation of trying to put the fire out, as well as screaming in their native language. There are even some destructive environments that are affected by the flamethrower, like trees and surprisingly these hanging Imperial Japanese flags. Following burn 'em out, we start the mission Relentless, where we must push deeper onto the island and eliminate the enemy artillery positions, specifically those on the high point that gave us trouble during our initial attack on the island during Little Resistance. We start the mission riding a tank before we are forced to find cover due to Japanese anti-tank gunfire. After this, the remainder of the mission is more of the same, pushing forward inch by inch. The focal point of this mission is the final push into the cave where the artillery guns are. There are at least 30 enemies in this cave alone that must all be eliminated. After securing the point, one of the privates remarks to the sergeant, "How many Marines did we lose taking this rock?" Sergeant Roebuck responds, "Already too many," showing that the Marines have made progress but the job is not done. None of the Marines knew how difficult this war would be and how the Japanese enemies would fight for every bit of this land. After Relentless, we're taken back to the European front where we have the first vehicle-based mission. Dmitri and Reznov are in control of a tank with the objective of pushing through Silo and destroying enemy tanks and artillery along the way. I don't know if it's just my old age, but I was getting blitzed by the enemy tanks on recruit. Good thing it seemed like I had unlimited health. Moving forward, we must disable a German radio tower to stall enemy communications, and then regroup and board a boxcar headed to Berlin. Vehicle missions are usually the low point of any COD campaign for me, but this mission wasn't that bad. I think the mission giving you freedom to go where you want and not being on rails helps to keep the mission feel fresh. Ring of Steel is the following mission, named for the amount of Russian forces surrounding the German capital. It is clear throughout this mission that the tides of war have shifted. Russian artillery bombards the German city as Russian foot soldiers and tanks advance forward. The Russian commissar comments about how fitting it is that it's Hitler's birthday, April 20th. Moving towards the heart of Berlin, a few German soldiers are found trying to surrender. The commissar tells his troops to murder the soldiers for what they did in Stalingrad. Once we make it to the German asylum, we're told to grab a shotgun for close quarters combat. Reznov comments that this place reeks of nightmares and madness. After clearing the asylum, we rejoin the armored forces and push forward through the streets of Berlin. Commissar orders German soldiers to abandon their posts or face certain death. As we're advancing towards the center of Berlin, the mission Eviction begins. Reznov comments if they stand for Germany, they die for Germany, one rat at a time. At the start of the mission, we are in a hallway walking towards Reznov, who asks us if we're ready. In the next room, Russian soldiers execute a German POW. This mission conveys that we're moving closer to our goal by the designs of the buildings. In the previous mission, many of the buildings were smaller houses or shops. During this mission, the buildings are much bigger in scale, conveying how much closer to the rotten heart of Berlin we've come. Once we fight our way through the abandoned building, we're back pushing through the streets. Approaching a heavily defended intersection, Russian artillery destroys and topples a building on the corner, disorienting and injuring everyone near it. Once the dust clears, Reznov orders us to finish the wounded soldiers. Nearby, some Germans attempt to escape down a metro entrance. Unable to open the gate, the soldiers surrender. Reznov orders Chernov to execute them, which he refuses. It is then up to the player to make a choice. The player can choose to fire upon them, causing other Russians to join in, or if the player doesn't shoot, the Russians will burn the Germans alive with Molotovs.
You should have shot them, Chair.
After this, more Russian artillery begins bombarding the area, forcing the Russians to flee into the subway. As we move our way through the subway, we reach a choke point with a locked door being our only way out. We defend Reznov as he tries to get the door open. A massive wave of water rushes towards us as Reznov finally gets the door open. The mission ends with us underwater, leaving our status unknown. The following mission is probably the most unnecessary in the game. That's not to say it isn't fun though. We take the role of the gunner of a fighter plane, fighting Japanese resupply ships. At one point, the plane is landed on the water while we rescue survivors swimming away from a sinking ship, while kamikaze pilots target our troops. Just as we run out of ammo, American reinforcements arrive taking care of the rest of the Japanese fighter planes. During this mission, we don't play as either protagonist and don't advance either of those characters' missions. It's just a bit of a distraction before the penultimate Pacific mission. Blowtorch and Corkscrew starts up to the player pushing a Japanese MG bunker with a flamethrower. We are on Okinawa Island now, having taken control of Pelulu. This mission has Miller fighting through waves and bunkers of Japanese with a Browning MG as well as the mentioned flamethrower. The final bunker is the biggest with the most resistance, but fire makes short work of them. The final mission in the Pacific Theater, Breaking Point, opens up with Private Miller having no ammo. The squad pushes toward an ammo drop as snipers start taking shots and infantry in ghillie suits ambush the position. Our goal is to advance and take control of Shuri Castle. To do so, we must clear out tunnels full of spotters who have called out our position to Japanese mortar teams closer to the castle. Once we exit the tunnels, we are just outside the castle grounds. Once we thin out the resistance, we're able to push deeper onto the grounds and find the 4 mortar teams we must clear. With these mortar teams gone, we advance forward into the castle buildings. A supply drop is coming down the courtyard that we need to secure. Moving through the building, we discover another tunnel under the castle itself. The exit of these tunnels puts us right where we need to be to secure the supply drop. Entering the courtyard, 3 Japanese soldiers are surrendering. Polanski and Roebuck move forward to search them, and the Japanese attempt to overpower the 2. Here, the player must choose who they want to save. You can only save one. I chose Roebuck because he's not a whiny bitch, and maybe I have a crush on Kiefer Sutherland. The final objective is to defend the courtyard by any means, including calling in airstrikes when needed. Once complete, Roebuck comments that everything asked of us we've done. The final scene is Roebuck handing us Polanski's dog tags and walking away. All of us are going home.
Once again, they failed. Once more.
Private Dmitri wakes up to Reznov dragging him up the metro stairs. The Germans tried to flood us and their own in an act of desperation. Once more, we cheat death. Reznov sees Chernov writing in his journal again, and takes it from him. He asks what will win the war, writing about it or fighting it. He tells Chernov no one will ever read this book. And if he isn't willing to fight for Russia, at least be willing to die for Russia. Moving through the neighborhood, dead German soldiers can be seen hanging from the trees. It can be assumed that these were soldiers who gave up fighting and had no choice but to take this way out. Reznov comments that the Germans hang their cowards from trees. The Russian troops move forward, advancing toward the German Reichstag, their final stand. The Russians overwhelm the Germans until the front steps of the building. As Chernov pushes up the stairs, he is gunned down by an enemy flamethrower and falls down the steps. Reznov, finally giving his respect, grabs Chernov's journal and states, "Someone should read this."
Someone should read this.
The final mission of the game, Downfall, starts with a cutscene depicting the in-game events up to that point. All of Berlin will know that the evil of the fascist Reich has been wiped from the face of the earth. While loading into the mission, an excerpt from Chernov's journal will be read, and has 3 different outcomes based on 3 different decisions made by the player. If the player does the right thing all the time and tries to help whenever possible, they will get the good quote. If they do a mix of decisions, they will get the quote "I got here." And if they are always brutal and make the harshest choices, they will get the bad quote. I think it's really interesting that a game this old had a morality system that affected one of the outcomes of the game, whether the player will be remembered as a hero or not through a dead man's writing. My younger self never knew this was in the game. Taking control of Dmitri, we push forward into the Reichstag, clearing the last of the German resistance. One thing I noticed is that some enemies are bandaged up and still fighting. This shows that the Germans really are on their last leg. We clear a large auditorium and they keep moving higher, through stairways, rooms, and hallways before reaching the top. Once here, we clear the enemies and Reznov commands us to plant the flag. Moving forwards to do so, we are attacked and wounded before Reznov can finish the German. Down but not out, Reznov helps us to our feet, and we plant the flag, signifying the end of the Nazi regime as well as the end of the game. Reznov comments, "As long as Dmitri lives, the heart of this army can never be broken," and how they will return to Russia war heroes.
Things will change, my friend. As heroes, we will return to Russia's embrace.
A somber cutscene of real-life footage plays showing that the war in the West has been won, and so the war in the East must follow. Footage shows the atomic bombs dropped on Japan that forced them into submission. A recording of General MacArthur plays stating how he hopes mankind will grow from this event. Text pops up stating the total amount of deaths from World War II, showing it to be the deadliest human conflict in history. Overall, replaying the campaign all these years later was an incredible experience. From finding new things I've never seen before to really paying attention to how effectively the tone and scenery illustrates the theme, it's clear that the developers had passion and vision when creating this campaign. the music and environmental designs being really standout positives for me. I also appreciate how they go through the efforts to show the atrocities on all sides of the war, not glorifying any specific country. Now, the entire experience wasn't perfect. I ran into a couple of bugs and one soft lock. Graphically, a lot of the scenes and designs still hold up to this day. Some of the textures may look dated, but still effectively communicate what needs to be shown to the player. The enemy and teammate AI is far from perfect. Also, I was playing on Recruit and I could see how Veteran would be a headache when grenades can one-hit you with no warning on the easiest difficulty. There were some design choices I disagree with, like the amount of screen shake, but I can see how they wanted to portray that part realistically. All in all, none of these things had a major negative impact, and considering how old this game is, this little amount of gripes should be a testament to the quality of the game design. I highly recommend for anyone interested to try this game out, or come back to replay it if it's been a while. Also, did I mention that the majority of the campaign can be played in 4-player co-op, and that you can find hidden death cards that change the way the game plays for everyone? Seriously, check this game out with some friends if you haven't yet. Multiplayer in World at War brought a completely different feeling compared to Modern Warfare. The class setup was similar, with players choosing one perk from each of the 3 different perk trees. Perk 1 was all equipment based with things like rocket launchers, C4, extra starting ammo, and even a flamethrower. Perk 2 was the most important perk tree, with perks like Stopping Power, which gave the player more bullet damage, Juggernaut, which gave the player more health, Sleight of Hand increased reload speed, and Double Tap increased fire rate. The best perk in this tree by far was Shades, which made the player resistance to the tactical flare, and it actually gave the player's character model shades. Perk 3 consists of things like Second Chance, also known as Last Stand, Martyrdom, Extreme Conditioning, Steady Aim, and Dead Silence were also included in this tree. A new addition to this game was vehicle perks. Some larger maps included drivable tanks, and the player could have one of 5 perks to increase the effectiveness of the tanks. Only losers cared about this though, and if you use tanks, your parents don't love you. The weapons in World at War are the standard World War II affair. This is the first game where the majority of snipers were bolt action and required a scope as an attachment. Also, using a scope on these bolt actions made the player reload 1 round at a time as opposed to loading an entire clip. Majority of the rifles are low ammo, semi-auto weapons. The SMG category was dominated by the MP40 due to its raw power, but the Type 100 and PPSH stand on their own. Shotguns in this game are kind of poo-poo and they only have 2 of them. The machine gun category has the most fully auto weapons, but they're also the most movement impeding, as well as having lots of recoil. The sidearm category had 4 pretty much identical pistols and then the 357 Magnum. For primary grenades, there was frags, sticker grenades, and Molotovs. For tactical grenades, there was smoke, taboo gas, and signal flares. Finding a match today is tough on Xbox 360, but at least I didn't run into any cheaters while playing. Bouncing Bettys are ridiculous when a whole team is using them, and a good sniper will run the lobby. Where COD 4 was dominated by mid-range assault rifles, this game gives the shine to SMGs and snipers. Many of the weapons have small magazine sizes, and all of them have extended mag attachment. This design choice helps Sleight of Hand become a more logical choice than it was in Modern Warfare. Map design mostly leans on the 3-lane concept, but that feels like a good thing compared to today's Call of Duty maps. Although I will say some maps are way too large for 6v6 gameplay. The 3 and 5 kill streaks are functionally very similar to COD 4, the 3 kill streak being a UAV and the 5 kill streak being artillery, but the 7 kill streak brought in the iconic dogs. These canines would run around the map hunting the enemies. They took multiple shots to kill and were a great distraction to help your team capture positions or just slay out. Killing enemy dogs counts towards the team's score during team deathmatch. Blowing enemy limbs off isn't unique to the campaign either. You can blow off legs and arms or get your own legs blown off by a bouncing Betty for the 27th time straight. Going back and playing this again was really a lot of fun, and the simplicity of just playing the game shows how overdone these newer COD titles are. There's too many attachments, guns, and weapon tuning nonsense in the newer titles. Just go back and simplify everything a bit, and multiplayer might be fun again. One key standout in World at War for me was the Iron Sight bolt-action rifles. They are a ton of fun and are a good example of a high-risk, high-reward weapon. The theme in multiplayer is spot on just like the campaign. Characters from the campaign are the narrators for the multiplayer factions. Some maps have secret audio Easter eggs hidden within them, like Dome has this weird chanting. Asylum has these weird whispering voices and creepy piano playing. Hangar has this audio of a man being tortured by the Japanese. And the map Airfield has the World at War is the birthplace of Call of Duty Zombies, a hugely popular game mode even to this day. Unlocked after being the campaign, Nazi Zombies takes the idea of Germans having unearthed the technology to raise soldiers from the dead. What started out as a game mode developed in secret turned into a main staple of Treyarch games going forward. The first map introduces us to the groundwork of Nazi Zombies, endless rounds of enemies with increasing health. The player must see how long they can last. The zombies pack quite a punch, downing the player in 2 hits. Shooting, knifing, and killing zombies all reward the player with points. Weapons can be bought off the wall or obtained randomly from the mystery box with these points. There are also doors and barricades that can be opened with points. You and up to 3 other players hold out near this German airfield until you are overrun. The map is tiny with basically 2 rooms that both have 2 stories. There's not much other than the mystery box and the radio that can play random songs from the campaign. The strongest weapon achievable in this map is the iconic ray gun, seen on nearly every map following this one. It's even obtainable in the mission Little Resistance through an Easter egg. The second map added through DLC is Verrückt, or technically named Zombie Verrückt, a German insane asylum. This map is more of the same but introduces some key new items. If playing with multiple people, players will be divided at the start with a door that can't be opened by points but can be opened by turning on the power. Throughout the map there are 4 perk machines that give the player perks similar to multiplayer. These machines also require power for use. Juggernog increases player health to 4 hits before going down, Sleight of Hand increases reload speed, and Double Tap increases fire rate. Quick Revive increases revive speed and has no effect during solo play. This was also the first map that had multiple box locations. After so many box uses, a player will get a teddy bear and the box will move locations. This map also introduced traps that had infinite damage and could kill zombies in any round, only requiring a cooldown period. Also a first on this map is a zombies dedicated song you can play by flushing this toilet 3 times. Each map going forward would have a dedicated zombies song, usually sang by Elena Siegman, who also happened to work with Harmonix producing Guitar Hero. The third map is set in a Japanese swamp titled Shinonuma. Technically these are Imperial zombies, not Nazi zombies, but Nazi zombies just sound so much better. This map introduced a unique trap called the Flogger and brought forth the dog rounds that appear every 4 to 7 rounds. The map featured the same perks as before but are now randomized at 4 locations. They spawn in once the doors to these sections are opened. Also introduced on this map is the Wunderwaffe DG2 weapon, a gun that shoots lightning that does infinite damage and chains to nearby enemies, killing them too. This map also marks the first time we play as the zombies characters Takio, Dempsey, Richtofen, and Nikolai. One of the negatives of this map is the water that slows the player down, making them easy to trap and down. In my opinion, this water mechanic makes this map the least fun to play and is the weakest of the 4 maps despite all the new things added. The final and most popular map is Der Ries, set in a German factory. This map features everything that came before it and more, the most interesting being the Pack-a-Punch. Accessing Pack-a-Punch involves the player opening pretty much the entire map and linking 3 teleporters. The most expensive thing in zombies up to this point, you could pay 5,000 points to permanently upgrade your weapon's damage and ammo capacity, and sometimes fire rate and reload speed. Upgrading the starter pistol changes it from a regular pistol to a handheld grenade launcher. This map had the first camping spot intentionally designed into the map, called the Catwalk. But real men train the zombies near power like this. This map introduced the first Easter egg quest, the Fly Trap. Using any Pack-a-Punch gun, the player can shoot a button outside the map and start a game of hide and seek with a ghostly child's voice. The child will hide various toys around the map that the player must shoot to find. There is no reward for doing this other than an achievement. Der Ries was also the first zombies map to feature a melee upgrade, the Bowie knife. Another new weapon added to the map was the monkey bombs, a cymbal-playing monkey that attracts zombies for a few seconds before exploding. I decided not to cover zombies lore in this video because this video is already long enough, but that might be some topic I tackle in the future. All in all, what started as a one-off mode turned into something that players look forward to coming back and playing time and time again. World at War is a masterpiece. A beautifully designed campaign, a fun and fresh multiplayer, and the new zombies mode just being the cherry on top. There's so many different modes and ways to play this game, and the value offered in a 16-year-old game is tremendous. If you've never played this game, I cannot recommend it enough. What little negatives there are do nothing to take away from the shine and praise this game deserves. We all know what Call of Duty game I'm going to review next, and it's probably most people's favorite. That's right, Advanced Warfare. Just kidding. but the next review will probably take just as long with all the gameplay footage needed to record and all the narrating and editing. It takes a while, but if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and most importantly, have a good day.